Welcome, everybody. Oh, and we are recording this because I had a few people email me over the last 2 days going, "Are you recording this? Are you recording this? I've got kids. I might be after school. It's school drop off." And it's like, don't worry, this is one not to be missed. So welcome, everybody. My name's Nicola Quayle, international chapter lead, along with Dave Kay, who, yes, see, shares bouncing in from Berlin. So Dave Kay with QRCA, the Qualitative Researchers Association, and we're super excited to be here as part of the international chapter, where we try and bring voices from all over the world, all about qualitative research. And when I spoke to Wing, a few months ago, I sort of said, "Hey, have you thought about actually sharing some of your amazing insights?" So Wing and I have known each other for many, many years from New Zealand, and Wing started her life actually in the sort of panel industry of all places, for a qualitative researcher, and then swapped over and has been diving deep into the world of understanding the Chinese consumer, not only in New Zealand. Hey, Sabera from Jakarta, nice to have you here. So not only from the Chinese consumer, outside of China, but Wing has spent many years traveling to China and really immersing herself in the world of the consumer and the market and what makes it tick. So for brands wanting to, naturally take advantage of such a large and I guess a culturally deep market, it's been a fantastic opportunity to have Wing here, and we're really excited to go inside the world of doing qualitative research field work in China. So welcome, Wing.
Thank you, Nikki, for that fabulous introduction. I will point out one correction, though. I started my research career in New Zealand in qual recruitment.
Oh, there we go. So it's full circle. Well, kind
yeah,
of.
exactly. Now, I just wanted to do a bit of a time check. Do I have 20 minutes to present the content?
You do, and then we're
Excellent.
going to take a Q&A because I'm guessing there's going to be quite a lot of questions at the end.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, and good evening, afternoon, morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on it's such a busy time of the year. And just a little bit more about myself is that I was born in China and came to New Zealand when I was 27, which is relatively late. And I've been in New Zealand for 20 years and worked in cross-cultural research for 15 years and have done studies in China, India, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and some research in Korea as well. So tonight, I just want to share some of my learning, often through trial and error, as you can probably relate to, and I hope you find them useful. Basically, China is a different beast when it comes to doing field work. Many of these points may sound familiar from your quote training, but my goal tonight is to show why they matter even more in the Chinese context, what works and what doesn't. Now, before we dive into the nitty-gritty detail of field work in China, I wanted to bring up 3 factors that you might need to take into your research consideration. And the first one is the regional disparity. China isn't just one market, it's a mosaic. So there is the northern and north versus south difference that you may have heard of. There is differences in food, language, and lifestyle, but there's also regional diversity shaped by this rapid urbanization just happened in the last few decades. The tier 1 cities are the mega cities with their consumers, there are a lot of affluent middle-class consumers who are familiar with Western brands, but then there are also growing interest from client side to invest in tier 2 cities where there is a bit more white space for them to grow. However, it is very worth noting that the qualitative research infrastructure sometimes is a bit patchy in tier 2 and 3 cities. So you might find it difficult to find good recruiters, qual panels, or venue support. So do consider that if you have the research budget, consider multiple cities in the north and the south and tier 1 and 2, if they're relevant to your client's needs, of course. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about is the China's digital world. So instead of using Google as a search engine, in China people use Baidu, and instead of using WhatsApp for personal messaging, WeChat dominates, has about 90+% market share. And for video sharing, instead of YouTube, China uses Bilibili and Douyin, which is the original TikTok. And instead of Instagram, they use Little Red Book. And instead of, for e-commerce, instead of Amazon, they use JD.com, Alibaba's Taobao and Tmall. And instead of Uber, they have Didi. Instead of Uber Eats, they use Meituan. So you get the picture. It's like a parallel universe, right? But when it comes to research, though, the research tools that we are familiar with, sometimes some of them just do not work in China, or they take forever to load thanks to the great firewalls. Now, Zoom has become, in recent years, become a lot more unstable. Teams has more and more become my go-to if I have to interview people across borders. So it's really important to have backup plans, or online community platforms like Recollective sometimes can be really slow to load. Basically, all of the Western online platforms, not just Recollective. And this is when you will notice the recruiters in China, they play a bigger role in research. I'll talk about it a bit more later, but setting up some kind of backup plan, like on OneDrive file transfer solution before you start field work, it's going to save yourself a lot of panic and a lot of time. Now, the other thing is that WeChat is so dominant in China. It's called a super app. It's WhatsApp, Apple Pay, YouTube, work Slack channels, and even online communities all rolled into one. However, I have to admit, Chinese domestic brands tend to use WeChat or Tencent meetings for research, so interviews and group discussions. But I have found the backend support of WeChat is not nearly as good as specialist core platforms, as you can imagine. However, it has this really interesting tool that I'll tell you a little bit about. Now, the fun fact behind that is that typing Chinese takes a lot longer than typing English. Why? Because Chinese is a really dense language. So instead of typing, people talk. And audio messaging is very, very widely adopted in China. And there's a nifty built-in tool within WeChat where you can push and hold a button, talk to the phone, and then release the button, send it. And you can also choose to convert it to text before you send it. But you better have really good accent that I recognize. So the interesting thing about this audio messaging tool is that it's familiar, it's fast, so participants are willing to share more because it's easier. Second thing is that it gives you a bit more depth, richer data, in the sense you can hear the tone of voice and emotions more than text messages. And from a participant's perspective, feels like they are sharing a little bit less personal data than perhaps self-recorded videos, which includes their faces, right? Often, I've had parents who roped in their kids to answer questions about kids' snacks and toys, which is really insightful and helpful. So there may be some opportunities for Western brands or researchers to look at and explore the opportunities of doing research via Chinese platforms. So far, the adoption rate from what I observed isn't high, but I think the opportunity is there. Now, one other question I get asked a lot is that what are the topics that I should avoid? What are the sensitive topics? There's the usual expected sensitive topics across culture, most culture. So things like religion, LGBTQ+, identity and personal finances. However, if you're considered a cultural insider and you have invested time to build the trust and make participants feel safe and comfortable and make them feel heard and understood, Chinese participants can be really open to share their views on some of these topics too, but it's best to be done in a one-on-one setting. Now, there are also topics that are definitely in the no-go zone. For some of these criticism on government and national sovereignty issues such as Tibet, Taiwan, South China Sea, historical trauma like Cultural Revolution, activism, protests, and things like that. And in the West, people might discuss politics and activism quite openly, but in China, it's a different story. And the fact that I know this conversation is being recorded, I have to check. The self-censorship comes up. I've got to be careful about what I share as well. So sometimes if you're unsure whether to ask a question in a group or not, send it to DeepSeek. If it doesn't give you a proper answer, then you know. You probably shouldn't go there. Because we actually have to consider participants, two things. We have to consider participants they need to feel safe enough to share the information. If they feel they have to give you an answer and they end up giving you a forced, politically correct answer, then it kills the data integrity. You might as well not ask it, not asking them that question. Now that we've talked about some of these factors to consider, I thought I'll share a little bit about how Chinese people build trust and communicate and how that plays out in a group setting. Now, to understand this, we need to go back a few decades and up until quite recently, sort of more recent than a lot of Western countries. Chinese society is based on agrarian economy. So survival and prosperity very much depend on the cooperation of the wider family and local communities. This historical backdrop leads to two distinctive Chinese values. One is that collective interest far outweighs individual expression. And the second thing is trust for an outsider needs to be earned. It's not a given. Now, unless you are considered part of an existing family and friends networks in China, trust starts at zero. You build it slowly through repeated interactions over a long period of time. This is what you might have heard the term guanxi before. Compare that to places like New Zealand. When I first came here, I was amazed. The trust starts at a very high level, if not 100%, and it only drops if you mess it up. So it's a very different scenario. In a 2-hour group, of course, you can't really build very deep trust from scratch. We are piggybacking on the proxy trust and relationship recruiters have spent years cultivating. So I just want to highlight in the Chinese context, recruiters play a much larger integral role in research than perhaps they do in Western culture. So I've covered that. I'm just trying to think. And then a second thing that's affected by the agricultural background is that collectivism. All cultures have varying degrees of collectivism, but for Chinese, this is far more pronounced in the sense people view decisions, whether it's about brands or designs or policies through the lens of what benefits the group, not just the individuals. I've got a couple of examples. One is that when I worked on projects that are encouraging Chinese migrants in New Zealand to vote, many felt that their single vote didn't really matter unless they could mobilize a group. And the second example is that it was a group with the client's competitive brand users. I explained to this group that the client is going to introduce a new patent that will allow them to make unique product claims while preventing competitors from doing the same thing. Now, when I explained this, the room fell silent. There was a long pause. And after probing, the people admitted that it felt like a monopoly. The brand wasn't sharing knowledge and with the wider community, and they're not bringing everyone else along the journey. So also when it comes to group field work in a group setting, this makes it much harder for us to hear true personal opinions. Framing helps. In a group, I often tell participants up front, today's conversation is going to be very different from our normal group chats. We're not here to find consensus. We want different opinions. If you think differently, speak up, because many other people out there are going to benefit from this. If you have provided this feedback now, that's leveraging that collective mindset, right? If they still struggle to contribute, I'll sometimes remind them and say, hey, the client hired us, they paid a lot of money for us to do this research for them. And your honest feedback will save them a lot of money later on. So Chinese people value reciprocity, and that's something that we can, again, leverage off as well. And there's also the usual trick of getting people to write things down before they share it with the group. But projective techniques also help. The projective techniques that I found that are not so helpful in the Chinese market are animal sets, especially the dog breed sets. Potentially is, I think, my hunch is because animals have different symbolisms in Chinese culture. But for the brand personification works really well, especially for the younger generation. If you ask them to talk about a fashion brand or a car brand this person's would use, and they talk about personality, they can get quite animated and give you really rich information. And sometimes bringing up the opposite opinion, we can say that, oh, someone else in another group mentioned this. Why do you think they might have said that? That's helpful too. Now, related to the collective mindset is this face saving and group harmony. The situation going back to the agricultural society roots, that people, it's really important. In Chinese, we say that a bundle of chopsticks are much stronger than one. So not openly criticizing others, preserving their face, can help ensure that harmony. So in the West, people debate and value individual opinions, but in China, avoiding conflicts is actually a sign of respect and social intelligence. It's think of harmony. It's a bit like in Western context, don't rock the boat kind of mentality. Now, the implication in a group setting is sometimes I'll say the concept designs aren't mine, so I won't be offended. Do tell me what you think. Or sometimes we'll say, what do you not like about? Instead of saying, what don't you like about it? I'll say, what could make it even better? And people will feel they are building onto something that's already good. It's not going to be a criticism. And one other thing, perhaps and maybe from a Chinese person, don't always mean they are indecisive. They're actually being polite by softening the statement so that other people can feel then you're not disagreeing with them, openly. Years ago, when I was new to New Zealand, one of my research partners told me to be more assertive in my recommendations, meaning to use fewer maybes and perhaps when I was presenting to clients. And this was really interesting. And then usually in the group, senior voices would dominate. I think my interpretation of it is that rote learning its teaching style at school really haven't helped in encouraging individuals to speak up. Speaking up with a half-baked idea is considered wasting everyone else's time. So people will hold back unless they feel really sure of the idea or they defer to the senior person in the group. I've been in New Zealand for 20 years. I still struggle with this. I catch myself doing this. So if you have ever sat in a meeting with the team in China and wonder why only one person speaks, and it's usually the most senior person of the team, others seems to agree. In reality, often they don't agree. They're just being polite. So yeah, and then one other thing is that framing the question well really helps. And one other thing I want to talk about is the Chinese communication is very much indirect and highly context-based. A lot is conveyed without words. You've got, I mean, all core researchers would watch the body language. However, the difference is that sometimes the pauses, the tones in Chinese culture could mean different things. What's an example? It's all right for someone like my dad. It's probably the highest compliment he will ever pay to anyone about anything. But for my niece, it means that, oh, I don't really like it, but I don't want to annoy you. So, yes, also don't always mean they agree with you, as I mentioned before. Now, sometimes when Chinese participants feel they are pushed to answer a question they don't want to answer, they will talk around the subject. They don't answer the question, but they also wouldn't give you a direct note. No, so as a researcher, in Chinese, we call this person is practicing Tai Chi on you. So they are pushing back gently without confrontation. As a researcher, you need to be able to identify when this happens and then ignore whatever feedback the participant's giving you after that point. Using real life examples, pre-tasks, and having stimulus really help frame the conversation, because asking people to send products and social media posts they've seen or ads they've seen will give you a way to introduce a topic in a real life scenario, getting people to talk about it. What else? I'm trying to think.
Hi, Wing. Sorry, I might jump
Sorry.
in just because that has flown past. We've got 7 minutes left, and I could tell by the faces I could see on the screen that everyone's really, really into your presentation, and I personally think it's very, very all right. And by that I mean absolutely brilliant. That was great. Um, so we've got about 5 minutes now, actually, just to take questions for it. Wing, I've got one question. I've actually got quite a few questions, but the one that I've got at the top of my head is, and this is from conversations I've had recently with clients. Would you say, would you agree with the fact that it's getting harder to do research in China? The reason I ask that is because I've got a number of clients who are asking more around the sort of the actual ability to go and get video content, to export the content outside of China, that kind of thing. Is it becoming more challenging?
Some of the things that the questions used to be able to ask are not really allowed anymore. What's an example is that you can't that China is tightening on product claims, and there are things that you definitely cannot say. I need to be more careful around now. And also video recording, there are some limitations. For example, you go into the supermarket videoing the aisles, and there are more talks around you need to seek permission. But I haven't personally come across issues with exporting, sort of getting recruiters to share video content to me that they've collected from participants. I haven't come across that yet, but I'll keep
Okay.
an eye out for it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I hope it doesn't come up too much. Brilliant. Any other questions for Wing whilst we have a
I
Yeah.
did have one question.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's been super interesting. I deal with a lot of freelancers, and I was just wondering whether there is a hierarchy of moderators. By that I mean, one of my freelancers was born in Singapore, and she speaks multiple, she speaks Mandarin, Cantonese, and a whole lot of languages. In terms of developing the best relationships with consumers, is there a hierarchy of moderators? How people respond to other moderators from other parts of Asia?
Can you give me a specific example? Do you mean that, or were there participants who are showing disrespect? I should probably stop sharing this so I can see you.
What I mean is I would make the assumption that if you are from China, you have the best opportunity to form a relationship with consumers. So it's assuming that a Chinese moderator is the gold standard within China. is then a next level down. So for example, someone like yourself who lived in China for 26 years and then moved to New Zealand, would that be like the next level down? That someone who was born there, does know the culture, but lives elsewhere now. So I guess I'm wondering, the short question is, who are the best moderators to have in a Chinese market?
I haven't noticed that participants responding differently to people from different background, so long as they understand the language as well as the culture. However, I have done research in Hong Kong because I am from Guangzhou. My Cantonese is of a slightly different style to the Hong Kongese style, and sometimes I'll have to stop and ask, are you able to understand? Have I explained that clearly? And sometimes people would be quite open to tell me, oh, this is what we was referred to as something else. But overall, if you say up front to say, I have lived elsewhere, and you actually play that card well, people are more willing to tell you the why behind it. I have found it to be a benefit. However, if you don't, Chinese participants respond really well when you summarize what they've said to you, and then before you move on to a next topic, if you don't show that you've understood what they're saying, the body language will change. They will start losing patience. Yeah, but I think that's not dissimilar to other cultures, really.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Wing, that was absolutely fantastic. I think everybody really enjoyed that, and we really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. It's been a great session. I'm just going to take a moment to plug the conference, which is coming up. So this is the US conference, which will be happening in San Antonio, Texas, 2nd to 5th of February. There's the link to find out more information. If you can't make it, or if but you are still interested in QRCA, then look out for another. There won't be one of these in December because, let's be honest, I don't think you get too many people joining on December 19th or thereabouts. But we are looking to start up fresh in the new year, and we'll bring you some other great speakers. And if you'd like to get involved in the international chapter and you're already a member, then speak to me, myself, Nikki. There's Cher as well on the call, who's a key part of the chapter. So get in touch. We'll answer your questions. And beyond that, yeah, look out for more info, and have a Merry Christmas when it comes. And Wing, thank you again for an amazing presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. I hope you all get the opportunity to do some work, explore the China market. It's fun.
100%.
That was amazing. Yeah, and we'll be sharing this recording as well, because I know there were a few people that were like, I'm not going to be able to make it. So yeah, we're excited to share.
You know what? We don't do this for US hours. And then we get lots of emails going, why are we doing this? It's like, it's the international chapter, guys. You get a lot of stuff. We get some stuff too. So that's why we do it this time. Brilliant.
Amazing.
Thank you. See you all soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.